Hello, my name is Dryptosaurus, and welcome back to another episode of, my Paleoart process. So I like to alternate between doing kind of Monster Hunter focused and, more hard science videos. So today, I want to talk about my Paleoart creation process for a Dryptosaurus that I drew to be put on Wikipedia. To start out with just a little bit about what this animal is, for a very, very long time, in the 1850s, theropod dinosaurs, which are the meat eaters, were only known in North America from very tiny bits of fossils. So nothing really that told us what North America's predatory dinosaurs looked like. In 1866, though, there was a relatively complete, I say relatively, this was the most complete North American theropod ever found when it was first discovered. This is Dryptosaurus. This is what we have of it. Um, and it was found in a marl pit in New Jersey, which was a fragment of a late Cretaceous coastal ecosystem. So this was right from when about the dinosaurs went extinct. And it was a kind of coastal seabed. You would have had skates, rays hanging out around there, and then obviously some meat-eating dinosaurs as well. Um, this is not a lot of material, like I said, but it was enough to differentiate it from some of the other meat eaters that were known, because pretty much all they had from Europe at the time was stuff like Megalosaurus, which is really, really different from Tryptosaurus. So E.D. Cope named it Laelaps, but Laelaps is the name of a kind of mite, and so he changed it to Dryptosaurus, which means tearing lizard, and the species name Aquilungus means eagle's claws. So Dryptosaurus aquilungus means tearing lizard with eagle's claws, which I think is really cool. So Dryptosaurus, like I said, was really, really different from all the European theropods. There was nothing like this animal ever found before. Um, because of this, a lot of the earliest theropods that were found in North America, besides Dryptosaurus, got like lumped in with it, kind of similar to what happened with Megalosaurus. So, for example, when people discovered Dilophosaurus, they thought it was another species of Megalosaurus. I think also when some folks found maybe Allosaurus. Point is, there are a lot of theropods that people were like, wow, this is similar to Megalosaurus. This has to be the same thing. They really overestimated the amount of variation that a single species could possess. And so they also really didn't have a great concept of, geological time. They kind of thought all these animals were living around the same time in the same place. That's where a lot of the Megalosaurus fighting Iguanodon concepts come from. Those animals didn't coexist at all. They're just both found in England. And so people thought they lived together. So in terms of the actual anatomy of the animal, very little material is known from the skull, just like the rest of the body. But we do know that the head was, around 2 feet long. Based on that material, we can size it pretty confidently. The teeth that we do have, I believe we have about 5 of them. And I've had the privilege of being able to look at this specimen in person, so I got to see it from all angles and really get my hands on it, which was super fun. But the teeth that we do have in there are what we call xiphidont teeth. So xiphidont teeth look like this from the side, and then from the top, they look like that. And those teeth they're very blade-like. For example, if you look at the tooth of a crocodile, it's going to look like that from the top, or from the side, and then it's going to look like this from the top. So these crocodile teeth are great for grabbing. The teeth of Dryptosaurus are really good for tearing. So they're designed to cut through meat, kind of like a steak knife. They're very thin in cross section, just like a blade, rather than being kind of a bunch of pegs, like you would see in a lot of fish-eating animals. So this is an adaptation for grabbing and pulling. So if we have so little skull material, why did I choose to draw this skull shape and not this one or this one? How do I know what this skull of Dryptosaurus looks like? Well, I don't, obviously, but I can make a pretty good guess. A lot of paleoart is being as limited as you can with your guesswork. And so what that means is doing a lot of reading and figuring out which animals Dryptosaurus was most closely related to so I can base its skull on those. So in the 1970s, when we were first trying to properly figure out what Dryptosaurus was after it was discovered, it was considered to be roughly pretty closely related to like Tyrannosaurus and Albertosaurus. So it was considered to be a Tyrannosaurid. But in the 90s, some folks started saying, wow, this is not that closely related to Tyrannosaurus at all. There's a lot of differences between the material of this animal and stuff like T-Rex and Albertosaurus. And then in the early 2000s, Thomas Holtz and some other folks were like, let's say this animal's not that distantly related to Tyrannosaurus. Even though it's probably not a Tyrannosaurid itself, it could be a Tyrannosauroid, which is like a little bit outside. So if you imagine like this circle, this dot is T-Rex in the middle of this circle. This outer circle is Tyrannosaurids. This bigger outer circle is Tyrannosauroids. So this is where Dryptosaurus is. This is where Eutyrannus is. This is where Guanlong is. Um, and then here's where Albertosaurus is, Tarbosaurus, all those guys. And then of course T-Rex. But with all that said and done, we're kind of in the spot where we're like, okay, Dryptosaurus is probably like a middle ground Tyrannosauroid. It's not quite a Tyrannosaurid, but it is a middle ground between some of the earlier Tyrannosauroids and some of the more advanced Tyrannosaurids. So Dryptosaurus is like Malcolm in that she is right in the middle. So this is Guanlong. This is a tiny little Tyrannosauroid from Asia, and this is T-Rex. This is not accurate size. I just kind of squashed these images in so they would all fit. These skeletals are by Scott Hartman. He's a fantastic paleontologist, and he makes amazing skeletal diagrams, so go check him out, please. So with that said, which animals did I base this skull reconstruction on? So I mainly referenced skeletals of Gorgosaurus and Eutyrannus. So Eutyrannus is this funky little tyrannosauroid from China on the left. It's a very big tyrannosauroid, and so it has these kind of very strange skull proportions. And considering that Dryptosaurus is probably a little bit more advanced, a little bit closer to being a tyrannosaurid than some of these other tyrannosauroids are, I wanted to give it a little bit more of a tyrannosaurid-esque skull, but I wanted to incorporate some of those earlier elements. So, for example, I gave it crests very similar to the crests on Eutyrannus's head. I made the skull a little narrower than you would see in like Gorgosaurus or Albertosaurus, but generally I tried to keep this a middle ground between like Eutyrannus and Gorgosaurus, which are kind of two animals that are on either side of Dryptosaurus in the family tree. So probably the most famous part of Dryptosaurus is the arms. These are the thing that give it its name. These claws are what allow it to be the tearing lizard. It has these gigantic 8-inch long claws, two of them on its hands. Um, and what these claws are, what makes them so unique is primarily their size. I mean, these are way bigger in proportion to the rest of the body than anything that's known from a tyrannosaurid. And this really throws a wrench into like our kind of analysis of trends in evolution, because what seems to be the case for the longest time, or has seemed to be the case, is that Tyrannosaurids just kind of got smaller and smaller arms as the Cretaceous went on. But Dryptosaurus is right from the end of the Cretaceous, and it has giant arms. So unlike those other Tyrannosaurids or other Tyrannosauroids that are like losing their arms, Dryptosaurus just kept really big ones because it was using them for something. So it's probably using them to hunt. And because of that, I wanted to make these arms super beefy. They're a little bit obscured by the feathers, which they probably would have been in life. This is an animal related very closely to some feathered animals, and some that are maybe not super feathered, but it lived in pretty northern climates, and it was a pretty small tyrannosaurid, at least compared to like the really large ones like T-Rex and Albertosaurus, where feathers are maybe questionable. So I wanted to cover it mostly in feathers. But yeah, so it has really big arms. It's got big biceps up here, then a wrist, and then these little guys down here. Um, this is a huge animal, hugely powerful arms, and it is built for like grabbing and tearing. It's so unique and so interesting to me that this thing even exists. It is a really bizarre animal. Kind of like my only, not necessarily regret, but maybe something I would have done differently with the piece. I wanted to kind of at first depict it in like a moving pose. But then I decided that maybe that wasn't the best idea, but I still referenced initially a skeletal that had the animal in movement. And so rather than being like perfectly at rest, where this sort of tarsometatarsus here would be cocked back a little bit and then it would bend around like that, this animal's kind of standing up. This is very much within its natural range of motion, so it's not like it couldn't be in this pose, but it's maybe a little bit more dramatic than I would have liked. I don't think it is a terrible mistake, and I think it's still quite well representative of what the animal would have looked like. Um, but you know, it's food for thought, and it's important to not only consider range of motion, but also just resting pose of some of these animals, because even though this is a pose that this animal could have taken, it's not the most common one. It's maybe not the best choice for a diagram like this. I did want to avoid making naked legs. A lot of feathered dinosaur drawings, especially ones from the early 2000s, run into this trope of having the body be feathered and then the legs sticking out and being naked. I know Ark does that with its raptors, and so the feathers go pretty far down the legs. Um, we do know that theropod dinosaurs likely had these scales up on their feet like birds. We have a few well-preserved theropod feet with soft tissue like that. Not closely related to Dryptosaurus per se, but uh, that's what the data regarding theropod feet suggests. So I'm following that. There's not really any evidence against that, and there is a little bit of evidence for it. So out of those two camps, I know which one that I'm picking. The claws on the feet are not as sharp as the ones on the hands, primarily because this animal is going to be walking around on its foot claws. They're going to be touching the ground and they're going to be scraping and becoming blunt, which is why animals like Velociraptor carry their killing claw if it's on their foot off the ground. Seriemas, which are living birds, also do this. They have a claw that they carry off the ground, and that's the one that they use to kill prey. And so animals that are always dragging their claws on the ground are going to have blunter ones on their feet than they do on their hands. So this is the full piece right here. If there are any issues with it, please do let me know. You can also check it out on the Wikipedia page. It's up there now. Yeah, if you guys find anything wrong with it, please, please, please let me know either there or on the, like the talk page of the wiki or anything like that, or just in the comments on my YouTube video. I try to keep everything accurate, and having that sort of feedback is super, super helpful. There are loads of folks on the Wikipedia review board who gave me little suggestions with the way that this animal was laid out. Mainly, I had the teeth a little bit wrong, and I had the tail a little bit too thin. I think this is actually the version with the thin tail. So the tail's a little bit thicker in the final painting that's on the Wikipedia, but this one just hasn't updated yet. But I just had the base of the tail a little bit too thin, and the teeth were a little bit just strangely shaped. So I went back and fixed that, and then I put it on the page. And so it properly represents the animal now. Just a final note, I guess, in terms of the colors. Initially, I had like a little purple patch on the face because I was like, "Oh, this is just for fun." And then I ended up doing a full body instead of just a facial portrait. And I was like, wow, I could probably put this on a wiki page, make it available for free use. By the way, this image is free to use. If you're making a video, or if, I don't know, if you're writing a school project or something, as long as you credit me, this falls within fair use. Feel free to use this image as a teaching tool. If you're teaching in a classroom and you want to mention Dryptosaurus as an example, you can download it from the Wikipedia page. Just please make sure you credit me to remain within fair use, because that is the Creative Commons licensing that it's under, is that legally you have to credit and then redistribute in the same license. But Wikimedia Commons is cool like that. You basically put your art out there and everybody can use it for free, which is great. But anyway, back to the coloring. I initially had a purple patch on the face, but it is highly, highly, highly unlikely that this animal would be able to have purple coloring rather than kind of a darker gray or brown. And that's because these feathers are too simple to have structural coloration. The only blue that we ever see in feathers is from structural coloration, and also this like weird pigment called tyrosine that Dryptosaurus absolutely would not have. And these simple feathers that it would have had, not the branching structures, wouldn't have been able to produce that sort of structure. So this blue that's on my shirt would actually be produced of black or brown pigments that are kind of woven together into these crystals. And so I got rid of the blue patch on the face. You can still see it on my TikTok profile picture. It still has the blue patch. And I'm going to use the version with the blue patch basically everywhere. I think that one's on my redbubble as well. But point being, it's highly unlikely that it would have been able to produce that blue coloration. And so I got rid of that and I replaced it with kind of just like a brown dark blotch. A lot of predatory animals have dark eye patches to hide the direction they're looking, to make their eyes appear less obvious, because prey animals a lot of the time will notice eyes. The same goes for prey animals as well. Having a dark eye mask is just generally very good for camouflage if you have dark eyes. So I definitely just wanted that dark coloration around the eyes there, because that's just a thing that a lot of animals have. With that, a huge thank you to all my paid supporters. You guys are amazing. Splift, DJ, Cake Chad the Vast, Brick Floatsmore, Elliot, Joe Evans, Ian, Gremlin Hours, and Devin Wilberg. You guys are really awesome. Thank you so much. You guys help me make videos way faster than I could otherwise, because it's easier to take time off and put time into working on these things when I get compensated for it. 'Cause that's just the way things are. Paleontology does not pay particularly well, especially for someone who's early in their career like me. And I also have to pay for school. So you guys are a huge, huge help. The other way that you guys can support me at the moment, if you are not on TikTok and you're not really interested in subscribing long term, I have a bunch of stickers over on my Redbubble and some prints as well. If you're interested in dinosaurs or Monster Hunter, I highly suggest you check those out. And you can grab prints, all that sort of stuff. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, for watching this video, and I really appreciate everyone who stopped by. So thank you.